Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. So now let's move on to the next section, which is how still on Julia, okay, making fast function calls. So as you experience also from the previous section, sometimes the one that what you call fast when you measure the old version, on the new version of Julia, it's already taken care of. Okay, so this is just the principle, but on the if you're using the latest Julia, you can try also. Okay, so I think the basic of Julia is just create a good program, a working program. Okay, and then after that you can optimize, but also you can do bottom up. Okay, bottom up or top down. Okay, that's also the case. So top down means you want to make sure that everything is working first. Okay, then after that you are trying to optimize to optimize the code. Okay, bottom up means you are based on the principle that we learned here from the book. Okay, so we try to optimize as much as we are building the program. Okay, so it depends on the different situation. Maybe if you want to have faster, you don't have time, for example, just see top down first, because hopefully the compiler can take care on the optimization part, and then most of the time, yes, okay, the compiler, the modern compiler of Julia, the latest version, is good enough, okay, for optimization. Okay, but nevertheless, let's see the theory, okay, so that you understand also the concept behind the Julia compiler optimization. Okay, so previously we are talking about the type, time inference, and stability. Okay, stability means that you know in hand beforehand that the output and the input variable, so that you can select the appropriate function. Okay, although you have the same function plus, for example, but if it is integer, you have faster integer multiplication. Okay, and floating point, not all is floating point operations. Okay. Okay, so what we see here on this chapter will be using globals. So there's some performance cost there. Okay, inlinings. Inlinings means you are copying the functions of a function. If you have function here, okay, function calculate, for example. Okay, and then this is your main program. Okay, your main script. Okay, Julia script. Okay, and then you call the function here. Okay, and then you call again the function here. Okay, instead of doing function calling, this one call in do inlinings, means that it will copy the code in here. Okay, it will copy the code directly in here, so there is no function call overhead. Okay, although it is small, but when you call for, let's say, 1,000,000 times, okay, then it will add up. Okay, at the end it will add up. So Julia tried to make an inline. Okay, the inline function. Okay, then we have closer and anonymous function using macros for performance, generated function, and how about the name parameters? The name parameters is something like function. Okay, then you put a, and then you put here like the performance, one parameters, let's say maybe something like additional factor, okay, equal to x and something. So this is name parameters. In Python, normally you see this one, it is more readable for API. Okay, rather than you put function, some function, and then you put some number. We just put like this function, okay, 1, and addition factor, for example, equal to 2. Then it's more readable, but there is some cost in here. Okay, so depends if you depends whether you want readability or you want to have a faster function. Okay, maybe for what you call performance sensitive function, you just remove this one, but for generic one, you just call once, for example, then it is okay to use this one. Okay, but for the function that call millions time, thousand time, maybe you can remove this one. Okay, and just put some comments then how to use the function. Okay, so for using globals, the rule of thumb here is do not use globals in performance critical part of our code, because it's difficult to inference that one. Okay, so this is the example, p equal to 2, okay, and then this t equal to random here. Okay, so you just even passing the pointer, you don't copy the parameters to the function again. So you are doing the function call. So this pointer is point to the address of t. Okay, and then what you call, then do the calculation here. Okay, do the calculation here. Okay, which has the type here of a vector float 64, but the p here is global. Okay, p is global here. Okay, so yeah. Then using code one type, so this is another in Julia. Okay, so you can another macro in Julia. So you have code one type power array t. Okay, then you can see here s will be any. Okay, what is s? S is here. Okay, this one will be any because the p is any. Okay, so you can see that the cost there. Okay, we cannot inference the type here, so it will put the any. Any is the top one. Okay, the top one. So you have, if you remember the previous chapter, previous section, you have integer, real complex, then you have integer, you have floating points, and so on. So it cannot infer. Okay, although this is integer 64. Okay. So what you see here, then we need to declare with constant. At least if it has changed, then it is okay. So you can see here from milliseconds. Okay, then now you can see here microseconds. Okay, then when you put code one type also, so you can see you can what you call infer that is integer 64. Okay, so yeah, and you can see here this is you just put the constant, and you cannot do this one. Okay, if you try this one, it will be error. Okay, so if I put this is global variable, means that you are typing in the where's my Julia? Okay, this one. Okay, you are typing at the global. Okay, so let's say if I put x equal to 2, that's fine. So if I put specify the type, then it will be error. Okay, so that will be the error. Okay, okay, so let's move on. Then another way to variables to pass global as a function, but I think you can skip this one because at the end, this is still the constant one is still faster. Okay. Okay, so the Julia code typically consists of many small functions. Okay. Unlike most other language implementation, some of the core primitives in the base library are also implemented in Julia. So different from Python or I'm not sure, MATLAB, for example, the performance critical code they are writing in C. So they still use C. Okay, but in Julia, they are using the Julia itself. Okay, to create the base library. Okay. So that's the overhead of function call needs to be as low as possible. So inlining is the optimization performed by a compiler where the contents of a functions or method are inserted directly into the body of the caller of that functions. As I mentioned earlier, you have the function, okay, and this is your main code. You have calling the function here, So instead of doing function call, you call this one, okay? Okay, so yeah, the compiler try to do the inlining as much as possible so that to make it faster. Okay, yeah, so that yeah, the Julia compiler automatically inline function that they consider inline worthy means that the small function with deterministic type. Okay, so for example, like this, okay, it will be inline. You can see here, there's no function calling when you put code type here G. Okay, then it will be inlining. Okay, so this one will be copy in here. Okay, there's no function call. Okay, there's no function call. Okay, so there's no invoke f instruction in there. Okay, yeah, so the heuristic one, the tune to maximize the performance causes excessive bloating of the compile code. Okay, when you do inlining, what will happen? You remember that it has some this much, for example, that it need to copy here. It need to copy here. Then you can see that the program will be bigger. It will grow bigger. So you need to have this one. Function call will be like this, just that bit. Okay, that's the function call, but there is some performance cost there. Okay, the inlining will copy this one. See, this one become bigger. Okay, so this is inlining. Okay, so this one become bigger. The code will be bigger. Okay, so instead of creating a code with 1 megabyte, for example, maybe you have the code for 2 megabytes. Okay, twice. This one is okay, but if you create multiple program, then it will cost also your storage. Okay. Okay, and also we have this is called code type here. Then we have also the intermediate LFVM intermediate using code LFVM. Okay, code LFVM. So if you see here, then this is the code LFVM. Do the multiplication directly. Okay, so you can see this do the multiplication directly. There's no function call there. Okay. Okay, then how to control inlining? So the Julia compiler will try the heuristic function to inline worthy function. Okay, typically based on the size of the function, but if it's too large, for example, it will be better to keep it that way. Okay, no need to copy into the main script. Okay, but if you want to enforce the inline, then use inline macro, but the compiler at the end will decide. Okay, but this is only strong encouragement. Okay, so the compiler will do the final decisions. Okay, whether to inline a function or not. Okay, so see, for example, here, this is a bit big. You can see here, a bit long here. And function, this is code type you have here. Okay, and then yeah, and then you try to inline in here. Okay, it's almost the same. Okay, yeah, I think it is the same. Okay, means that this function can be, if you are using the compiler, this one already Julia think that although it looks like complex, but Julia said, oh, this one is fine, I can do inlining. Okay. Yeah, so in some situations it may be useful to turn off all inlining, for example during debugging, so we want to know which one costs the performance and so on, so we can put inline no. So you need to run Julia minus inline equal to no, so the Julia will not do. Okay, so this one will disable all inlining. Okay. Yeah, so yeah, so no inline, for example, or you can use also another one, inline, or this is not inline, I don't want to inline this one. Okay, when you don't want to know inline, what happens? Okay, you can see here, it calling the function invoke main fn. So this is function call. Okay, function call, although this one is simple, it can be it's called Julia compiler by default can do the inlining, but it doesn't do because you have the no inline macros here. Okay, then it will do function call. Okay. Okay, so yeah. Okay, the next one is constant propagation. Okay, so when a function is called with an argument that is known at compile time, okay, the invocation can happen once at compile time, and the call is then replaced with the constant value at runtime. So for example here, you just put this is the function. Okay, this is the function, and then square root 2, the function here equal to square of 2. Okay, so then you can see here, just return 4. No need to do multiplication again. Okay, because this one is constant. Okay, so Julia is able to do this one. Okay, it's able to do constant propagation so that it will be faster. Okay, this is just return 4 compared to you do the multiplication. Okay, maybe if this floating point multiplication, also this one will cost you the performance. Okay. Okay, so that is the constant propagations. Okay, and then using macros for performance, we have focused on making our function run faster. Okay, but sometimes the best way to make any code faster is to do less work. Okay, so this involves changing the algorithm itself. Okay, we have the beta algorithm, or moving the computation to compile times, which leave less work to do at runtime. Okay, so you compile first, then it will be faster. Okay, so and also for dynamic language as Julia, like compile time and runtime are not always clearly defined. In some sense, everything happens at runtime because Julia code is usually not compiled ahead of time to binary. Okay, so different from Rust, you need to compile first. Okay, you have the Rust compiler. Okay, compile the program. C compiler, you need to compile the program. Okay, so but Julia using the just-in-time compiler. Okay, so this is the compilation process, the one that you have earlier. Okay, so you have raw source, okay, then parse, and you have macro expansion, macro expand, code lower, this another one. Okay, from here you have type inferencing, then you do the inlining, and you do the generated function expansion. So you have here code type, okay, so you have generated function, okay, generate the function, means compile first the function so that it will be ready. Then this intermediate library, you notice also called LLVM, and this is called native. Okay, so when you run the Julia on ARM processors and Intel processor, one is sys, one is RISC, for example. Okay, then you have different instruction. Okay, you have different instruction. You have different code native. Maybe the code LLVM is almost similar. Okay, but the code native will be different. Okay. So yeah. So you can see from here, then you can follow up. See if you want to see the Julia provide a good macro here, the code lower, code type, code LLVM, code native. So in which you can see and evaluate your code and see the what you call whether it is already efficient or not yet. Most of the time, yeah, yes, it is already efficient. Okay. So Julia macros are code that can be used to write other Julia code. So macro is executed very early in the compilation process. So here, okay, macro there. Okay, as soon as the code is loaded and parsed. So macros are usually used as a means to reduce repetitive code. Okay, just use some macros. Okay, whereby large volume of code with a command pattern can be generated from a smaller set of primitives. Okay, so and also this one can be used to improve the performance in some situation. Okay, so this can be achieved by moving a common or constant computation to the compile time wherever possible. Okay, so let's see this one. We want to evaluate the polynomial AIXI, so we just multiply A0 A1x power of 1, A2 x squared, A3 x cubed, and AN xn here. Okay, and then when you see this one, this is the polynomial function. This is for, remember, this is for type stability. You need to define if x is integer, then you will use the integer. Okay, if your x is floating point, then you will use the floating point. Okay, so this one will be 0, all this one will be 0.0, depends on the type of x. Okay, so this one will create a type stability. Okay, yeah, oh yeah, this one already mentioned. Okay, so you can see from here, this one already implementing the formula here. Okay, so p equal to p plus ai x to the power I minus 1. Yeah. Okay, so then we move on. Yeah, so something like this. I think this one also should be n minus 1. Okay, I missed this one, n minus 1 there. Okay, so yeah, so when we do this one, x equal to 3.5, and we measure b time f naive x. Okay, so we are splicing in the value of the input into the f naive functions. Okay, so if we call this one, then constant propagation will optimize away the function call. Okay, so then you can see here, yeah. When you do the second time, okay, this one do the second time. Okay, you do the second time, then it will have on nanoseconds. Okay, so you have the nanosecond. And also, although this nanosecond, but this is quite long, okay, for modern CPUs. So if you want to know what is your maximum floating point operation, so you can try pick floats. Okay, pick floating point operation like this. Okay, and then you'll see, yeah. So this is the maximum in my computer will be 1.7 to the power of 11. Okay, floating point operation per second. Okay. Okay, so the other way to improve the algorithm is to find the better algorithm. So instead of do something like, so this is like a recursive. So bn here, bn minus 1, bn minus 1 here, bn minus 2, and so on and so on. Okay, so you can do the recursive. Okay, you can do the recursive. Okay, rather than you put the power directly. Okay, then you can do the recursive. Okay, so using the Horon algorithm, so you can see just multiplication. Okay, here compared to the previous one, which is you are using this one. Okay, so yeah, so you do this one. Okay, from length A, from the biggest number, then you have the step is -1, and then this is 1. Okay, when you do this one, 6.83 nanoseconds. So this is around 30 times improvement. Okay. So like small improvement because it's nanosecond, but consider that you are running, for example, million times. Okay, then it will have or still even if you are running million time this one, still 6.38 seconds. Okay, so 6.438 seconds. Yeah, then then you start to notice here. Okay, you can start to notice that it is take a long time. Okay. Okay, so then we can also using the macro. Okay, we can use the macro here. Okay, then even you have some additional one. Okay, so you're creating the macro. Remember that the step here. Okay, the step here you're creating the macro. Okay, to make it easier. Okay, and sometimes it has the performance benefit. But if you don't want, also there's also okay, because it's the what you call this 6 nanoseconds. Okay, and this one only 4.5 nanosecond. Okay. Okay, so the macros run very early in the compiler process, as if we see the previous graph earlier. Okay, when there's no information about how the program might execute, so the input to a macro are therefore simple symbols and expression. The textual token make up our programs. Yeah, so we have something called generated function to have something like macros, or you can hit code generated code at a point where the compiler has inferred the type. So you can see from here something like macros. Yeah, this one. Okay, where is it? Yeah, this one. Okay, but in here I have already type inference. Okay, so I know already which type. Is it integer? It is floating point. Okay, so this one will be faster. Okay, later on, because it's already know which one to use. Okay, the macro is doing earlier here. Okay, macro, then type inference, then generated function expansion generated function, right? Okay, so yeah, so then we can use the generated function keyword, which declare that a function can be called normally from any point in the rest of the other program. Means you generated first, okay, before the compilation, even before the macro. So you generated first, okay. Yeah, so you see here, where is it? Yeah, so this is the code calculate the number of cell of a multi-dimensional array. So you return the size. Okay, so this is return the size 250, and then now you can put here generated. Okay, do the same thing, 250. Okay, but the time, what's the time? Yeah, okay, maybe the next one, the time. Yeah, so the time here you can not the time there. No, it doesn't measure the time, so you can try to measure the time here. Okay, you can try to measure the time because it already compiled it, then it's already know. Okay. Okay, the next one is the last for this chapter is the using keyword arguments. Okay, so you can see like this. Okay, y equal to 1, z equal to 1. So you know the function name, the function. Okay, not only you don't put directly 1, 1, but you put here which one. Okay, z equal to 1. Okay, so you can do this one. Okay, this one is without the parameters, so you can see the performance here. Okay, using the name parameters. Okay, you put like this. Okay, this is without the name parameters. Okay, so you need to separate by semicolon here, the name and unnamed parameters, so you can combine here. I'm not naming this one, but I'm name this one. Okay, so you can see here 8.3 and this is 5.5. Okay, but I put here some note, the latest compiler, in my case 1.6.2 or 0.3, and here it does not show any significant difference. Means that I think the Julia has found a way to optimize, okay, this one. Okay, so let's move on now to the next section, which is fast numbers. Okay. Yeah, so fast computation with numbers are central to everything we do in Julia. Okay, so the basic number type in Julia are designed to closely follow the hardware on which it runs. Okay, integer and float, for example, have the same behavior, which is defined in the CPU hardware, and operation on them run at the hardware speed. So this is very fast. Okay, and the decision to have default memory type that are as close to the metal as possible, or this is CPU, that contribute to the C-like speed of Julia. Okay. So for example here, integers in Julia are stored as system integers. Okay, and the default size is depends on the CPU and OS. Okay, in 32-bit OS, of course, you have 32 bits by default. On 64-bit, you have 64 bits by default. Okay, so you have integer 32 and you have integer 64. Okay, So the maximum is 2 to the power of 32. This is the maximum is 2 to the power of 64. Okay. And the word size constant can also be queried. So this is 64-bit or 32-bit. So you can try. Okay, this is easy. So we can try now. This is what's the code here? Yeah, this 64. Okay, in my computer. Okay, the bit string display the underlying binary representation. So bit string 3, you can see here, there's long, this is 64-bit. Okay, so if you count, if you don't believe, you just count yourself. Okay, this is 64-bit. Okay, then you have here 1, 1, 2 to the power of 2 to the power of 1 plus 2 plus 2 to the power of 0. Okay, so this is 3. Okay, and for minus, what happened here? So you do you have the two complements represent of a number. Okay, so you do the two complement represent of the numbers. Okay, then after that add 1 to the result. So you do here complement. This is 0 become 1, 0 become 1. Okay, this is become 0 0 0 0, and then you plus add 1. So that's why you have add, or you have 1 here. Okay. Okay, so yeah, so you have integers. Yeah, so for example here you have my add, yeah, this one. So you can see this is the integers already. Okay, and then yeah, so another advantage of storing numbers in the machine representation. Okay, similar like the CPU that we use. Array of the numbers can be stored using contiguous storage. Okay, so this is the x1, x2, x3, x4, and so on. Okay, and then yeah, so it will just use the pointer, then can point to the correct one. Okay, this is important. The Julia does not do not perform overflow checks for integer. Okay, does not do for what, for faster performance. Okay, because normally the integer is representing the counting, the counter, the one that can be counted. Okay, the one that can be counted. Okay, normally it's not not much. Okay, so if you put type max and type min, so this is the maximum and this is the minimum. So you can see here. Okay, this is the maximum. Okay, and this is the minimum. Okay, this is 7, this is 8, the different. Okay, so this is the maximum. Okay, this is let me see how many this one. Okay, this million, or this is more than enough, I think. Okay, 9 billion. Okay, 9 billion. Okay, so let's see what happens if you add this one, this number plus 1. It doesn't do anything. Okay, if you add this one, so plus 1 plus 1, it doesn't change. Okay, it doesn't change also. Okay, yeah, so you don't do the integer overflow in that case. Okay, so this is different from the behavior of another popular dynamic language as Ruby and Python, which include overflow check, but there's a cost to do that one. There's the cost of the extra CPU operation to check. Okay, so and normally we use the integer for countable things, and we don't count normally beyond 9 quintillions. Okay, I'm not sure how many zeros there. Okay, 9 quintillions. Okay, so but if somehow you need to know upfront, if the numbers know upfront, we can use another representation, which is big integer, for example. Okay, so the number will not overflow, but there's some performance. It will check the overflow for big integer, and you can use also floating point numbers. Okay, for example, you cannot guarantee whether this is what you call the maximum number that you want. You don't know. Okay, so then you can use the floating point number. Okay, there's another package called Saver Integers, which we can use. So if you know that our program needs to operate on large integers beyond the integer 32 and 64, there are various options. If the number still bounded, still we have integer 128. Okay, so this is double than this one. Okay, or if arbitrary integer, you have big integer type here. Okay, so you can try this one, but you can see the performance here. Okay, compared to this one, integer 64. Okay, compare this 128, computation 32. So this is cost you more, but it try to check the boundary. Okay, the boundary. Okay, so then the integer, just bear in mind the integer in Julia will not have the overflow check, so you need to use it carefully. Okay, Then, but the floating points, we have the check. Okay, so we have here Julia using the IEEE 754 binary standard. Okay, then yeah, so you can see here, for example, bit string 2.5. Okay, on 64-bit floating point number, 1 is signed bit, 11 is exponent, and 52 bits is mantissa. Okay, the number itself. Okay, so sign, and then you have mantissa, sorry, exponent. Okay, and then you have the mantissa here. Okay, yeah, this one, sign bit, mantissa. This is 2.5. Okay, if you calculate this is 2.5. And this one is, yeah, this is the number itself. Okay, yeah, you can follow this one, and you can see that this one is 2.5. Okay. Okay, the accuracy also, of course, there are some accuracy here. For example, yeah, so this one, when you try that, there is some what's it called, you need to sacrifice some accuracy. Okay, that's why when you're using the floating point number, sometimes it's rounded to 0 because you cannot capture the actual one. Okay, so there's some error there. Okay, when the error is what you call propagated, then you can see it, although you have 0.0001 error, but when you go to the calculate for rocket trajectory, for example, then it will go, instead of the moon, you are going to the Mars, for example. Okay, although there's some small error. Okay, so you can try here. This is the last one. Okay, the least one. Okay, the next float here, the next float of 0.1 is this one, means that we can have any number between 0.1 and this one. Okay, but not smaller than this. Okay, not smaller than that. Okay. Okay, you have also unsigned integers. Okay, for Julia. Okay, and then sometimes we need to do the threading performance for accuracy. So sometimes you want to have, you want to ensure you do the using the floating point numbers first. Okay, then you can see the what you call the performance. Then if it is can fit with integer, you can use integer. Okay. And also we have the fast macro. This one is the tool that can be used to loosen the constraint of arbitrary floating point operation in order to achieve greater performance. Okay, means that you have some errors due to running effects. Okay, but it's you try to minimize as small as possible. This is similar when you are using the C-lines or GCC. You just put the option here, fast math. Okay, so this is, for example, fast math. Okay, you can use this one, fast math here, and see the difference. Okay, microsecond, this is nanosecond. Okay, so you tried some error here. Maybe this is not that see this one, this is not exact at this one. Okay, yeah, the 6 is missing here. Okay, but still if it is not important in your calculation, means that you are trajecting for the moon, you will not go to the Mars, for example. Okay, then you can use fast math. Okay. Okay, so then the next one. Okay, this is fast math micro. Also, you can use this one. Okay, KBN, you don't worry about this one because this one, the latest Julia does not have the issue. I've tried, and more of the time this is similar. Okay, and we have the last one is subnormal numbers, are very small floating point values near zeros and useful for gradual underflow. Okay, so they are numbers smaller than those that can be represented without needing zeros in the significant. Okay, so sometimes you want to put that one, can you calculation? Okay, yeah, so you can try here, set 0 subnormal to true, and then you can see here minus 0.0, and this one will be false. Okay, this is not equal. Okay, but if you set to true, then it will be equal. Okay, so yeah. Okay, the last one on this section is using array. So let me finish this one. Okay. So array operation are often the cornerstone of scientific and numeric programming. If you are using machine learning, if you are using the artificial neural network, CNN, for example, you are doing the matrix operation. Okay. Yeah. So yeah. So array we can think as the what you call the, yeah, so the fundamental structure for the everything. Okay, so the majority of Julia's execution time is spent in array operation. So let's see here, let's see the array internal and storage bound checks. So you don't want to have buffer overflow. Okay, so you don't have to have buffer overflow, but remember any check will include the performance. Okay, then in place operation, in the case of RAS will check, okay, whether they can safely use or not. Okay, is there any boundary buffer overflow or not buffer overflow. Okay, broadcasting, we have done this one earlier. Subarrays and array views, you can use also SIMD. This one maybe the topic of the next one, multi-threading. Okay, and let's see. Okay. Okay, so yeah, so the Julia performance, as we discussed earlier, using the type inference, okay, to compile specific and fast mission code for different data types. Okay, and of course, this one also related with the array. Okay, so you have, if you can know that the x is integer, if you have array of 100, okay, integer, then it will be faster. Okay, this is the collection of the similar data type. Okay, so yeah. So the array type in Julia is parameters by T and N. T is the type of its element and N is the number. I think this is similar like in the what you call in Rust. So you have UTF-8 string. You can see here. You can also put string there. Okay, and this is how many, or floating point, then how many. Okay, to the dimensional array. Okay. So this is the representation. The element of the array are stored within the array's own primary memory allocation. So this is the index 1 to 6, for example. This is the value and this is the address. What is 1004? Because 4 bytes. Okay, the integer, I think this one integer 64, 32. To the power of 4, 16. I think 16-bit. Yeah. So you have here 16-bit. Okay, so that's why you can see the starting point is 1000, 1004, and so on. Okay, and so in most other dynamic language, all the arrays are stored using pointers to the values. Okay, and then because the language runtime does not have enough information of the type of the values, so when the array is allocated, the contiguous storage simply consists of pointers to the actual elements, and then with the next one, okay, pointer 0, pointer 1, pointer 2, pointer 3, pointer 4, and so on. Okay. Yeah, so the storing arrays in line without pointer in direction is for many Julia performance claim. Okay, other dynamic language, the type of every element of the array is uncertain. Okay, but in Julia, this is certain. Okay. Okay, so yeah, so this is two-dimensional array. You can arrange in row major or column major. So this one used in C, for example, and this one used in MATLAB, in Python, in Julia. Okay, so they're using column major. Okay, you go to the column first, column, then the next column, the next column, next column. So this is one continuous memory. Okay, so that's why if you see in chapter 2 or chapter 3, I think you see that the for loop is faster when you are doing on the inner loop of rows, okay, and C, but in Julia maybe it's faster we are doing in the column wise, okay, column first, okay, the second dimension first, okay. Yeah, so yeah, so the arrays in C are stored in row order and so on. Okay, so let's move on. Yeah, so let's see the performance of reading arrays in sequence with the following. So this is column iteration and this is the row iteration. So you can see here, yeah, so column iteration is faster, okay, compared to the row iteration because Julia saved the array in column wise. But again, I put some note here. Using the latest compiler, the difference is insignificant, okay, not that significant, okay. Okay, so yeah, so you can use adjoin here. You can transpose the matrix, okay, transpose the matrix, okay, and see now it will be vice versa, okay, it will be different, okay. The iteration is less, this one, but again, using latest compiler is not significant. Okay, so this is array initialization. You can fill, okay, fill 1 to the 4.4, so you have 4.4 here. So you have fill here, okay. This is, if you know the type, you can see this is be faster, okay. So it's going to be faster if you know the type, okay. Okay, so let's move on. Bound checking. The Julia runtime performs bound check on array by default. Okay, the array so that the array is not indexed outside their limit. So if you have B100, for example, you are not pointing to B101. Okay, it will create some error. This create buffer overflow. Okay. So let's move on. But remember that bound checking has a cost too. So remember, like overflow in integers and floating point in previous sections. Okay, so integer does not have checking, so it will be faster compared to floating point. It has the what you call overflow checking. Okay, so you can see here prefix bound, prefix inbound. So you can put the inbounds. Okay. So when means that I don't need to check this one. Okay, I tried Julia. Don't check this one inbounds. Okay, this matrix. So this array is always inbound. I will not go beyond that one. So you can put inbound here. Okay, so you can check here. I check with the latest compiler also. You can see around 5 times faster. Okay, so using the inbounds. Okay, so you can see here the performance cost of the buffer, what you call the array checking. Okay. Okay, so this is the inbound. Okay, and then you can also do the check bound. Means that when you run the Julia, you run Julia minus check bounds. Okay, equal to yes or no. Okay, yes means you will check all the things, and then the inbound will be ignored. Okay, if no, then or will not do the checking at all. Okay. Okay, so allocation and in-place operation. So you can see here, let's say we have the trivial function x power, okay, x squared, x cubed, x to the power of 4, okay, one as an input and return the first few powers of the numbers, okay, and then another function we can use the loop here, use the first function to compute the sum of square or large sequence of number, okay, similar like this, okay. So the x power loops, you cost the millisecond here. Okay. Yeah. So, but if you are using the x power loop, it will be faster because this one already what you call the this one already generate. So you allocate the output. Okay, you already allocate the output. You know already the size of the output. Okay. Okay, so in order to do that one, okay, you can use also something like this. Means that you want to change the result. Okay, the result is part of here. Okay, the result is part of here. If you have something like this, what does it means? Okay, x power like this. It means that when you give the input, the output will change from this one. Okay, so similarly in C, like you are passing the pointer, and then you automatically you change the output here. Okay. So the result here will copy back to this one. Okay, so you have this one. Okay, this is muted argument. By default, if you put here, this is unmutable. Okay, this one means cannot change and cannot change. Okay, you cannot change here n equal to 2, for example, in here. Okay, you cannot change that one. Okay, but if you are using this one, then you can do like this. Okay. Okay, so this is pre-allocating function output. When you do pre-allocation, it will be faster. Okay, when you do pre-allocation, it will be faster. Okay, another one is size hint. Allows the programmer to specify the size of the dynamically resized collections. Okay, so but again, the modern version of Julia actually very fast at allocating and resizing arrays. So this one is not used anymore. Okay. So, and also if you have the mutating function, so you can see here, this is faster. Okay, so you just change directly here in this one. Okay, you are passing the pointer. Okay, so you see the difference here. Okay, so make in place sorting operations by changing the input, so the input can be changed, okay, to another output. Okay, the next one is broadcasting. We have done this one. Okay, so for example, we have this one and this one, square root dot. Okay, means you are in MATLAB this element wise. So you are doing the element operation. Okay, element by element. So 1 plus 5, 2 plus 6. Okay, this is 8, for example, and so on. Okay. Yeah, so that's why in like not like MATLAB, writing factorized code in Julia is not performance optimization, because Julia has done this one already. Okay, writing loop in Julia is already pretty fast. Okay, so that's the good thing about Julia. In MATLAB, you need to do factorize. You don't need what I mean is like this. Okay, factorization means you are multiply by factor directly. Okay, multiply by factor. Rather than you are doing the loop, then you multiply AI times BI. Okay, this then you multiply this one directly. But in Julia, writing loop is similar like this one. Okay, it even the similar things. Okay, yeah. So this is broadcasting. Okay, so you can see here, yeah, B time is equalize this one. Okay, nanosecond here. Okay, yeah. So yeah, so Julia has array slicing. You are slicing the array. So you have one big array here. You slice into 3, for example, like this. Okay, so you can see here the examples. Okay, randomize and then column matrix. You can use the benchmark. Of course, you need to use using benchmark tools. Okay, using benchmark tools. Okay, and then you can run this macro. You can see here the performance, memory estimation, how many times the garbage collection do. Okay, the mean time is this one. Okay, the garbage collection. Okay, and other things. Okay, other information. Okay, so this is array slicings of the jet column. Okay, this is the on the jet column. Okay, another one is a view macro to slice arrays without copying the underlying data. So you don't need to the what you call it will have faster. Okay. So this one with view. Okay, you don't need to do. There's some view code here. Where's the this one? Okay, just view. Just view. Okay, I don't need to copy. Okay, because if you do slicing, then you are copying. Okay, then you can see here. This is 1.3 milliseconds. Okay, in here it will be 3.3. Less memory operation. Okay, what does it mean here is less memory operation when you are using the view macro. Okay, but otherwise, if you just use this one first for the moment, and then if you're sure, then you can add the view macro for the added performance. Okay, almost how many performance? 3 times. I think 3 times performance. Okay. Okay, the last one I will discuss more on the next slide. Okay, or on the next what you call chapter, inshallah. Okay, so yeah, this static array, there's another package and so on. Okay, the last one is struct of array. You can also have structure of the array. Okay, similar thing like the previous one. Okay, so yeah. So you can have pixel, and then you can have array or pixel. Pixel defined as struct. You have the position X, Y, and color, for example, and you have the array of the pixels. Okay. Okay, so I think that will be it for today. Okay, any question so far?